Hey everyone, I'm back. Now I recently reviewed the Atari Flashback for my first ever video game system review, inspired to do so by another channel that I subscribe to. But now I want to talk about some of the other systems I have. Now you might ask yourself, well, what systems do you have, Brian? Well, the systems I have may surprise you. And I want to start out by talking about the original system that me and my family got when we were me and my sisters and family got when we were kids. And that is this system, the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now you might say to yourself, well, wait a minute, that doesn't look like the Nintendo system. That doesn't look like the one I remember. Well, you're right, it doesn't look like the one you remember. Because this was actually brought out around 1994, I believe, or 1992. And the reason it was redesigned was to coincide with the release of the Super Nintendo. Now, at the time when the Super Nintendo came out, the original Nintendo design or console design was still being sold. But like I said, to coincide with the popularity of the Super Nintendo, they made this redesign of the original NES. Now, I can't really recall, but I think some people said that the reason they did this is because with some of the original Nintendo consoles, they had problems ejecting the games. Sometimes the games would get stuck, and they wouldn't eject. When you open the door, they wouldn't come out or anything. Here, you could just do like you do with the, you could do what you do with the Super NES. You could just pull the game out. Unfortunately, this doesn't have an ejection button, so basically what you got to do is sort of take a page out of the Atari systems and pull the cartridge out. But that is the first one of the systems I have. Now you might be saying, well, why do you still have the system? Well, I'll get into that in just a little bit. Now I do have the controller, original adapter, and yes, the original zapper. Well, the zapper was great. This one I bought at a game exchange. Okay? And I do have the connections in the back of the TV. Now, down here we have, it's probably one of the most popular systems and one of the most bulky systems. Ooh, there goes a lot of it. The Super Nintendo. Now, you might say to yourself, well, why do you have a Super Nintendo? Well, I didn't really expect this to come my way. I mean, honestly, I went out for a visit one year to California when I was still living in Kansas. And next thing I know, I was taking this home because I guess a family member had an extra one that they already had one. They didn't need an extra one, so they gave me this one. But anyway, this is basically the next gen. This is basically Nintendo's answer to the Sega Genesis. See, when the Sega Genesis came out, Nintendo was being blown away, so they had to come up with something just as good. So what did they do? They came up with the Super Nintendo, which is more of which is kind of a venture into the 12-bit, into more from 8 to 12-bit to more like 14, 16, 18-bit. Because it all depended on what kind of games you played on it. Now, there are a few additions to it. It has an external part. I don't know what that means, external. I guess that's for extension. And a multi-output. In other words, if you want to play with multiplayers, I guess. Not wireless or anything, because wireless wasn't around at the time. But that is what the Nintendo is. But that is the Nintendo Super System. And down here are some of the games I have. But that is the Nintendo Super System, or the Super Nintendo, the SNES, one of the systems I have. Now, over here, I have a video system. Now this is one of the systems I bought on my own. And it is the Gamecube. Now, when the Gamecube came out, it was basically Nintendo's venture into the next-gen consoles. In other words, I can't even think what kind of graphics we've been going up to. I guess they forgot about all that. But it was more of an improvement from the N64. And it also had a few good features. It did let you, I think, it gave you the opportunity to play online because it has this little symbol here. I don't know if you can see that. And it allowed you to connect this, the Game Boy adapter. In other words, this is a Game Boy player. That was one of the best features I found about the GameCube, because it allowed you, here on the, if you can see it better now, it allowed you to play your Game Boy games and your Game Boy Advance games on the big screen. So in other words, let's say you have a Yu-Gi-Oh game or a Sonic game or even a Mario game, and let's say the batteries on your Advance were dying out and you still wanted to play the game, you could pop it in here. You could pop it into this little slot right there, and you could play the game. And here are the controllers for it as well. And there's the disc for the Game Boy player. That was the one thing about the Game Boy player. It came with a disc, and what you had to do is you had to put this disc in, so you could play your Game Boy games. Now over here is what I call my most prized possession. I bought this on my own as well when it first came out. Actually, I had to wait for a while before I bought it, but I was working at the time when I bought it, and that is the Nintendo Wii. Now, a lot of people like the Nintendo Wii because it's family friendly. It doesn't have very, violent games on it. It doesn't have many violent games. It doesn't have the mature ratings and all that. Not many of those. So you were able to play as, just be as family friendly as you wanted to on it. Another cool feature about this is that when you turned it on, you had a choice. You had a whole screen, a whole menu screen come up. And on that menu screen, you were able to get, if you were online, you were able to get news, weather, and unfortunately you had to download it and if you wanted it, for about 100, I think it was about for 100 points, I'm not sure, you were able to have an internet channel. So let's say your brother or your sister is on the computer and they're doing homework and you want to go online and they're using the internet to do so, and you want to go online to go check out, let's say, your favorite, comic book sites or your favorite video channels. The Nintendo Wii gave you that option because it allowed you to go online with the internet channel. It also had the option of the Wii Shop channel. In other words, there was all these little squares on there, and for some of you that have the Nintendo Wii, you know what I'm talking about. You go on the Wii Shop channel, and you had all these different consoles, publishers, and of games and all that, to where for certain points, you were able to download that onto your Wii console, and one of those empty spots in the menu, one of those empty box spaces, was filled up with that game. You had other cool features, like you had the Me channel, you had the other channels and stuff like that. It's a pretty good feature, and it's a very good buy at what it is. Very good buy. Now over here are the controllers. Now you might say that my controllers are a little bit more different. Well, this is before Nintendo put the protective covering on the controllers, but these are the Nintendo Wii controllers, the nunchucks, and of course the Guitar Hero. Now this was actually a good feature for the Wii, because when Guitar Hero first came out, it was only exclusive, I think, to the PS2 and the Xbox systems. It was never exclusive to the Wii. Well, they fixed that, and right here you can connect your Wii controller to your Xbox and play your Guitar Hero games. Now you might say to yourself, well, if you got all these systems, do you have any games? Yes, I do. I do have some games. I have the games right here. Now I don't know if you could see them. I have some Super Nintendo games. Two of them are over there, which is Guitar Hero, Aerosmith, and Mario Strikers Charged, Mario and Sonic, Super Smash Brothers, and Rampage. And then here are my GameCube games right here. I don't know if you can see them. And then right here, of course, you can't have, the NES and the SNES without a few of the game cartridges. And these are some of the games. I got Tournament Fighters, Bonkers, and WrestleMania. And then over here, I have some of the Nintendo games like Baseball Stars, Tiny Toons, 2, Tailspin, WCW, WrestleMania, and Rescue Rangers 1. Now, you might ask yourself, well, why do you have all these systems? Well, I'll get into that in just a little bit in part 2 when I show you my other systems.